Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming your way to do something which, if you've been paying attention to the channel, perhaps you've been looking forward to for a couple months. I know I sure have. If you've been paying attention to the channel, you'll know that every now and then for the past several months I've been stopping by to read aloud from the official Splatter Movie Guide. This came out in 1989. And I've been reading off and on for the past several months from here and giving my thoughts on the spiels in the book. And it's really been actually kind of fun, just another kind of a thing to add into the channel just every now and then to make videos about and stuff. And me being an anal bastard, I wanted to wait until more of like, you know, Friday the 13th kind of weather to stop by to read the Friday the 13th bits from here, and seeing as how we find ourselves in, I don't know when the hell this is being published, maybe sometime in May or June, maybe possibly sometime in May, I would imagine. We find ourselves in the spring 2026. I'm like, you know what, I can't wait anymore. I have to read the spiels from there's actually since this came out in 1989, we do actually have the spiels, if you will. That's what I call the little blurbs, the little write-ups for the films of the first 7 Friday the 13th films. So we get to read those and see what they say about them and see what I think about them. And gosh, this is going to be so fun. And just like all these videos, I haven't read any of these, synopsises, spiels beforehand. So I'm reading them for the very first time on camera, so my reaction is genuine and authentic. What's funny about this video is I contemplated, I was like, originally I was going to do all 7 in one bundle like I'm doing, and then I'm like, God, should I do each one separately? And then I'm like, God, publishing every 3rd or 4th day or so, 7 movies, this is just going to take a long time. And so I just, we'll just do all 7 of them in one video. So I guess maybe that's enough blabbing from me. Let's see what the hell they have to say about Friday the 13th. As we can see here, Friday the 13th, Paramount Pictures, 1980. A summer camp that was closed down after 2 counselors were brutally murdered prepares to reopen for business. One by one, the new counselors are stalked and slaughtered by a relentless killer. This is the controversial box office smash that propelled the independent, low-budget splatter movie into the big time, spawning a host of sequels and gruesome imitations, as well as a syndicated television series that had absolutely nothing to do with its progenitor. God, he's so smart for using big words. We'll just say progenitor, except the title. Effects by Tom Savini. Director Cunningham, the producer of Last House on the Left, has since left the directing chores on most of his films to others. You might call him the George Lucas of low-budget splatter. Yeah, that was kind of boring. It was basically just like an alternate version of the back of the VHS. It just describes what the movie's about. There's no opinion one way or another about it. It's just like the synopsis and like some history or whatever. Incidentally, like, that's not entirely true. Like Sean Cunningham, I think, did he direct House? I can't remember. I'm not a big fan of House, but I think he might have directed House. He directed Deep Star 6. He didn't hang up directing. So that little detail is completely wrong and inaccurate. So admit, yeah, it was kind of disappointing in a way. It was just kind of boring. So there's nothing really, since he doesn't give an opinion about it. He just basically gives a rundown of what the movie's about. There's really nothing for me to comment on. I guess I kind of commented on the fact that there's not much to comment on. Friday the 13th. Part 2, Paramount Pictures, 1981. Jason returns to get even with the counselor who killed his murderous mom. Then he goes back to camp to take up where Mom left off. Steve we'll just say Kirchhoff handled the gore effects this time. In this and most subsequent this time, that's a period. In this and most subsequent Friday the 13th flicks, the MPAA insisted on cuts and Paramount agreed to avoid an X rating. Still fairly splattery though. Once again, whoever wrote that doesn't really give his, thoughts on the movie. He just kind of describe. This is kind of disappointing. Oh well, it's still fun to read. It's just basically, like the back of the VHS. They're just telling us what the second movie's about or whatever, and so I waited months for this, but I guess let's continue. Friday the 13th, Part 3, Paramount Pictures, 1982. This third entry in the saga of the indomitable Jason was shot in 3D to separate it a bit from the pack. The 3D effects are good, especially the scene where Jason pops out the eyeball of one of his victims, and it seemingly lands in the audience's lap. The film is not in 3D on video or television prints. However, the plot is standard Jason fare. The story takes up where Part 2 left off, as yet another band of unwitting teens enters the Badlands of Camp Crystal Lake. Okay, well, anyone that knows Friday the 13th Part 3 knows it has nothing to do with Camp Crystal Lake. It takes place in Chris Higgins' family country place, Higgins Haven, so that's completely wrong. This time around, they encounter not just Jason, but some murderous bikers. Okay, well, that's not true either. The bikers don't kill anyone. Not at all discriminatory. Jason proceeds to decimate both groups before going up in flames. Okay, now this is getting better, because this is absolutely like going up in flames. There's no Jason going up in flames in this movie. Martin Becker handled the gore effects in this one, and they're just as good as ever. So this was probably the most fun little spiel so far. It gets really interesting when whoever writes these things is like off on details, like murderous bikers. Well, the bikers aren't murderous; they're just assholes. And well, they plan to burn down. Oh, is that why he thinks Jason goes up in flames? The bikers, of course, plan to burn down the barn to get revenge on Shelley and company and stuff, but they're not murderous. I guess if someone had been in the barn when they burned it down, they would be murderous. But as far as we know in the movie, they're not murderous, they're just assholes. And as far as Jason going up in flames, I mean, that wouldn't happen until what? Friday the 13th, Part 7? That might have been, is that the first time Jason was ever engulfed in flames? It's very possible. So that was more like it. That was a fun read, and I couldn't help but comment on some stuff as I was reading the spiel. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Paramount Pictures, 1984. Though killed in his previous outing, Jason. Okay, see, it says Brooker. Jason's not played by Brooker in this one. It's the other guy. So that's, yeah, Richard Brooker. Yeah, that's completely wrong. Though killed in his previous outing, Jason rises from his slab in the morgue like some supernatural creature to go on yet another spree. In this episode, the screen's most prolific and versatile mass murderer is vengefully chopped up into little pieces by a monster makeup enthusiast named Tommy, who shaves his head to make himself look like Jason. Though subtitled The Final Chapter, the film ends with the implication that the emotionally disturbed Tommy, seasoned by his massacre of Jason, will assume Jason's role in future films. And sure enough, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, followed a year later. Okay, well, this bit was very kind of boring, like the first, what was it, first two? But that's okay. Some details, I think, what is it, one detail wrong? He says Richard Brooker returns to portray Jason, and it's kind of embarrassing that I can't think of who does play Jason in the fourth film. I know it's definitely not Richard Brooker. It was someone different every movie until basically Kane Hodder stepped into the role in the seventh film, and then continued with 8 and 9 and 10. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. Paramount Pictures, 1985. Though only a year separated the release of the final chapter and A New Beginning, Tommy Jarvis, Jason's pre-pubescent executioner in the previous film, has somehow managed to grow into a teenager, released from a state hospital where he has been undergoing therapy for traumas incurred in the final chapter. He is placed in a private hospital located out in the boondocks. He's plagued by night and day mares. Don't they call them night terrors now? I don't understand that. It's like I grew up, my whole life it was nightmares, and now then I don't know if night terrors are something different than nightmares, but I don't know if if daymares would be day terrors these days. Who the hell knows? He's plagued by night and daymares about Jason's return. And after one of Tommy's fellow patients is axed to death by another quote-unquote inmate, the old boy returns with a vengeance, knocking everybody off, one by one, with as much nudity and as gore-filled as the others in the series. Martin Becker once again handles the effects, which by this time are getting more than a bit repetitive. Part 5 strives to be a whodunit, or rather, who is it? But director Steinman gives the killer's identity away early on. He practically puts a neon sign on him. The ending, where the physically and emotionally battered Tommy finally dons Jason's mask for the next sequel, comes as no surprise either. Easily one of the worst installments in the series. This one was a little more fun, I think. I think it was the longest one so far, and it's kind of like part saying what happens and part giving a little bit of his thoughts into there. So it's kind of disappointing because he doesn't really say one way or another. One thing he does say is the weakest in the series, and that's something I used to think or agree with when I was younger. But as time goes on, 5 has become much more elevated, and as an adult and stuff, the black humor and just the absurdity of stuff and this and that, and the nudity is welcome, and just the hick, the backcountry hickness of some of the characters, and just the over the topness of so much of it is so great. And Harry Manfredini, top of his game. There's so much to love about the Friday the 13th Part 5, and it definitely was lower on my whatever, one of the lower, how do I describe, definitely one of my least favorite of the series when I was younger. But as the years went on and I grew up and stuff, I'm like, you know what, this is just a fun ass romp that's just over the top characters, over the top this, over the top that, just copious amounts of nudity. Yeah, you gotta love Friday the 13th Part 5. Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Paramount Pictures, 1986. Writer-director McLaughlin either didn't see Part 5 or decided to forget about how it ended. In part, I think that the latter is true. In Part 6, Tommy Jarvis, this time played by Tom Matthews, returns, not as Jason, which the ending of Part 5 implied, but as the hero who digs Jason up to make sure he's dead and inadvertently brings him back to life, courtesy of a bolt of lightning. There's a lot more humor mixed with the gore effects in this outing. The opening credits include an amusing parody of the James Bond logo as Jason, seen through a gun barrel, walks across the screen and hurls a knife, blood dripping down the screen. I don't think he's seen through a gun barrel, but they do recreate the James Bond famous opening thing, which is funny to me. The best line in the film belongs to the alcoholic gravedigger who comes upon Jason's open tomb and opines? Why did they go ahead and dig up Jason? Some folks sure have a strange idea of entertainment. Yeah, once again, mostly just a description of what happens, but that's fine. I guess that's one way the book or the people who write these little blurbs, that's one way to do it. I'm just trying to think, I'm just trying to remember what the hell he said. I gotta go look at it again. Yeah, just continuing in the trend of mostly just like a box, back of the VHS box or whatever, just saying what happens. One thing that is interesting, and he gave his opinion on kind of how the end of the fifth film suggested that Tommy Jarvis was going to follow in the footsteps of Jason Voorhees, now that Jason Voorhees is dead in the fourth film and someone else was the killer in the fifth film, so we're going to make Tommy Jarvis the killer in the sixth film. Obviously Tom McLaughlin didn't want to do that. What the hell are you going to do with that premise anyway? So I agree with Tom McLaughlin's choice to make it Tommy good. Just because he put on the mask and went like this to Pam at the end of the fifth film doesn't mean he killed her or became a killer. Maybe he just went boo, So I'm fine with the fact that Tommy Jarvis is the hero in Friday the 13th Part 6. And of course the blurb writer also mentioned that Part 6 of course famously takes more of a tongue-in-cheek aspect to the franchise for the more or less first and more or less only time. I mean, not to say there's no humor in any of the movies, but yeah, definitely more mainstream, Part 6, and more tongue-in-cheek and this and that with the James Bond opening and all this kind of stuff. What's really strange to me is how so far we're almost to the end of these, and no one ever mentions Harry Manfredini's contribution. Like, come on, man, he can't even talk about the signature famous, I go, the famous frickin' world famous Harry Manfredini music and the, ma, all this kind of stuff. You can't mention that at all. It'd be funny, if this is the last one Harry Manfredini worked on in the 80s, and it'd be interesting if they mentioned the music in the seventh blurb. I don't imagine they'll mention the music in the blurb for the seventh, but let's find out right now. Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, Paramount Pictures, 1988. This latest installment in the long-running series contains no surprises. In fact, even the gore is less explicit due to more stringent controls from the ratings board. The filmmakers have the killings down to a science. The camera cuts away at exactly the right moment so that we think we've seen more than what is really shown. In fact, so tightly trimmed are these shots that if you happen to blink at just the right moment, you may end up thinking you've seen much less than is actually the case. I don't know why he's got to put some of these things in the parentheses or whatever. That's dumb to me. In any event, in this outing, it's Jason's back, and Carrie's got him. As writer Gary Drucker. Is that name in the opening credit sequence? Gary Drucker. I don't know if he's got that name right or not. I don't know if that name's, I don't know. As writer Gary Drucker, attempting to inject some freshness into the tired conventions, pits our ever-changing quote-unquote hero against a young woman with telekinetic powers. You might call it a classic conflict of mind over splatter. There you go. That's fun. Who wins? Paramount Pictures. They reap the profits. Okay, I like the end of that. Now, this one is probably not penned by John McCarty. We can see these initials, JB, and I'm pretty sure he did one of the little spiels for one of the Christmas ones that I read back in December or whenever the hell it was, because I'm like, what's JB? Oh, it's Jingle Bells. But yeah, I imagine that's the same guy, JB. Well, there you go, all 7 movies. They can't mention Harry Manfredini's miraculous, amazing contribution at one time. Well, of course, this is a splatter guide, so I guess it's not a music soundtrack guide. So they talk about the gore effects a lot. Well, it's a splatter movie guide. I guess it makes sense. But come on, Harry Manfredini's freaking huge contribution to these movies, can't be understated. Well, unless it's this book, I guess. But I definitely like the little fancy schmancy play on words or whatever. And who wins? Paramount. They reap the profits. Like the way it ended was amusing. I don't know how well known it was at the time that they wanted to do Freddy versus Jason, and that was the plan from what I understand, that was the plan for the 7th Friday the 13th film, was Freddy versus Jason. When they couldn't make that happen, they did Tina versus Jason. I don't know if they knew that back in 1989 when this book came out or not, but it was also, I do agree with the kind of the take on like the gore and how heavily it's trimmed, and how if you do blink you will, his little bit about that kind of was I think was very aptly described, where the gore is trimmed so trimmed down to pretty much nothing, that, like he says, if you do blink, you may miss something. And his little thing he said about, the way that's edited makes it look like you think you see more than you are, and if you blink, you might miss stuff. And, I actually liked, if JB would have done, I kind of like this little blurb. If JB would have done more of these Friday the 13th blurbs, maybe they would have been a little more entertaining and less disappointing or whatever. But, yeah, it's mind-boggling to me that they did the first 7 films and not once mentioned Harry Manfredini. That's just, to me, that's a crime. But I guess that'll pretty much do it for my readings from official Splatter Movie Guide of the first 7 Friday the 13th films. Admittedly, maybe a little bit of a letdown, but life goes on. Let's enjoy life and spring and Friday the 13th films. So I guess that pretty much does it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, we'll catch ya on the next video. Jun 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 jun. Jun jun jun. Jun jun jun.